Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Fresh Friday. My name is Gareth, and today I am sat once again with Mr. Liam Kingswell. How are you, buddy?
Hello, mate. How's it going? I'm excited about today. I know I say that every episode, but I'm excited about today. It's gonna be a good Fresh Friday.
It is extra fresh this Friday, and we've got so many people jumping in. So a few shout outs before we get going. How's it going, Seb? How's it going, Steve? Everybody else who's jumping in, welcome. I think we've got a few new people joining as well today. This is the place where we delve into the world of brand, marketing, and all things digital to help people spread the word, which is what we try and do here on Fresh Friday. So if you're a business owner, if you're in a corporate environment, or if you just want to learn some stuff which is going to help you out, this is the place to tune in. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live, so get your questions in today. We've got a very exciting guest who's joining us. And what is today all about, Liam?
Well, today is all about the art of virtual selling, which is up this way. I think with sales, like we've got probably the best salesperson I think I've ever met.
God tier.
Coming out, God tier sales level. And I think what's really interesting about sales is I think we do it more frequently than you think. You might not think you're in a sales role specifically, but actually on a day-to-day basis, you're always selling. Like you may not be selling like a product or a service, but when you're speaking to people, you might be selling yourself or selling something that you do or something along those things. So there's lots of things that are going to be covered here. And I think some of the tips are going to be super, super insightful. So I'm quite excited. We do have a lot of people on Facebook and YouTube at the moment. So welcome everyone. Hope everyone's well. We got a really cool show lined up. It's going to be super, super cool. Please make sure to like, subscribe on YouTube if you've not done so already. We've got lots of cool content coming your way. And yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's bring on our guest today. We could do. It's that way, isn't it?
Try the door this way.
We could try that out. This guy who's joined us today is the co-founder of a global events agency. Introducing Mr. Adrian Le Mans.
There was no door in the end. I forgot.
There was no door. We had that in rehearsal. Morning, Adrian. Thanks for joining.
Guys. Pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for the ridiculous, crazy intro. I don't think I've ever been introduced like that before, but I'll certainly keep it, record it, reuse it.
We do try.
God tier was the.
I know God tier is the quote. Yeah, I don't know which one trumps which. The elephant being milked while everyone was waiting, or the God tier comment. They're both pretty impressive.
Maybe
so good morning to everyone.
Yeah, good morning. And maybe we'll let the guys in chat decide. Is it hashtag God tier or hashtag elephant milk that we're going to run with today?
Yeah, let's have a poll. I'm
let us know
to find out.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, thank you for joining. Obviously, we know you. This is why we've got you on the stream. But we are very aware that some people may know you who are tuning in, but some people may not. Would you do the honors of just letting the guys know who you are and what is your kind of day-to-day role and position at Envy Create?
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. So I'm Adrian, as you know. I'm one of the founders from Envy. Envy's a global experiential agency. So we deliver experiences of all sorts of types and natures in all sorts of ways, generally to some of the biggest brands in the world, which means that we get to do lots of really fun and cool stuff. And that's what I do every day.
Definitely do. I think we've had the pleasure of working alongside you and your company in a number of different ways. And there's so many brands you've worked with. We're not going to shout them all out now, but if anybody wants to check that out, go and head to Envy Create online. We'll put a link into your website as well. Now, apart from all that, obviously the subject of today is selling. And obviously you're the head of a global events agency, experiential events agency. And we had a quick chat before we came on, and I think it's a good place to start.
Yep.
with sales in general, we've got a couple of things we've got to roll into in a second, but with sales in general, just to set up the topic, in your opinion, because we're marketeers, like me and Liam are more
Yes,
marketeers than
you
sales.
definitely are. Yep.
Do you think sales gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes? Because some people think of sales as a bit dirty, and some people equally
Definitely.
think of
Like a kebab.
some people
Yeah.
think of marketing as a bit of a dirty subject. What's your take on that?
Yeah. I know. I think some people don't see marketing as dirty, more fluffy, if I'm honest.
Party
I,
planners.
yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone's got their view and perspective of it, depending where they sit on that side of the fence. And I'm just fortunate that I've sat on both sides of the fence and lots of different sides of the fence. And now I have to watch the fence from above, if you know what I mean. So neither is dirty or fluffy. They're both a bit of both, as always. And actually, understanding one another is actually one of the keys to success. So marketing definitely has a place, and sales definitely has a place, and neither is more valuable than the other, because marketing actually generates all your brand integrity. It generates what people recognize you as a brand, and actually can generate that interest and preconception of what you're about. But sales are also key because they're actually the point of that spear. And sales are actually the ones who directly then engage with the clients and actually find out what they truly need and make sure that there is a good match between those things, and then package that together in a way that actually meets their needs. And you can't do one without the other, but you can see that if you're in sales, you think quite tactically because you're focused in on delivering to a client needs. And when you're in marketing, you're thinking probably more holistically and strategically because you're trying to catch all. You're trying to think about your target audience and how do I make a brand statement that engages as many of those as possible. So that's why to a salesperson or team, marketing seems more fluffy. And that's why to marketing, sales seems a bit more down and dirty, as you say it, as we just said, the kebab of the meals. But in actual fact, it is the tip of the spear. If it is, then marketing is the shaft of the spear.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you just mentioned there around the differences, I think the core element that I've come to understand over the last few years is good sales and good marketing is very different to shitty sales and shitty marketing. And I think
Definitely.
where the two really come together, and probably what we're going to discuss in a short while, is how these two kind of come together. And I suppose where the bridge actually meets is this virtual world that we find ourselves in now. I think the barriers are blurring an awful lot, where I think sales was very defined, where it was less digital. And now what we're finding, because it is more digital, the two things are combining between sales and marketing. Do you think that's a fair point?
I agree and disagree, if I'm honest. I think the lines are definitely blurring with almost everything we do, for lots of different reasons. And I do think that technology advancements is one of those. And I think the knock-on effect of technology advancement is a big factor in that. So now we've all become digital. I still remember when we first went digital, basically people said all the printing companies were dead and all these kind of knock-on effects that they were talking about from a negative perspective. And the truth is we print more now than we ever did. And then you go into, well, why is that? And the real reason is because we now communicate more than we ever did. Because before, we never used to be able to email. We had to send a memo in the post. Now we can email pretty easily, pretty frequently to large groups of people, and in any place in the world. So what we've seen is this massive growth of communication, which has knocked on to what you're talking about. Because of that, that's created this big convergence of all of the departments, because we're now able to communicate much more freely with each other. And I think that is a great thing. That is a good thing. There's also, with every good thing, it's a double-edged sword. There's a danger in it that people can over-communicate. The important communication can get lost amongst the cannon fodder of other comms. but I still think that the fundamentals behind it haven't changed. So that's why I only half agree with you. So I think I actually would say to you that the strategic side to it is the same, but the tactics always change every single day.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
And we will get into each of them subjects. I think sales fundamentals and some of these tactical or strategical changes, which we've mentioned. So guys, if you're enjoying the stream, like Liam said earlier, subscribe, give it a share, give it a like, and get in the comments. Shout out Madassa, who's in there, I think, already.
Yeah, we've also got a couple of people. Yeah, so we've got, especially around the hashtag, which was elephant milk or gold tier. So
yeah, how's that going?
Seb said, yeah, I'm loving the strange intro to the elephant. It's a little bit disturbing, but great. And Lyle,
Fresh Friday all up, isn't it?
Exactly, Fresh Friday
all
up,
is.
yeah. Lyle on YouTube has combined the hashtags and gone,
of course, good on you.
Hashtag God Milk, which I'm not sure is suitable or not. But
on a Friday morning, probably not.
Maybe not.
If that's a Lyle, I think it is, then it's meant in all the best intent, and I love it. And he's the one person I would have thought that would have come up with that, to be honest.
Oh, well, there we go. That's good news.
High five as well. Yeah.
So I think we need to jump into the first section of the stream, don't we, Gaz?
Yeah.
We do. So for those of you who are tuning in, and yourself, Adrian, I suppose this is the first time you've been on Fresh Friday, so I'll let you know about what you've signed up for as well. We do have something called the Fresh Fire Round. Now, this is our chance to get to know you a little bit more, to get to know the God tier Adrian Le Mans underneath the veil. And there is a bit of a competition, which we know, given your sales background, this will definitely be up your street. So, we'll bring on Fresh Fire Round. As we lock and load, we are ready for another Fresh Fire Round. Now, so you are aware, and everybody else is, Adrian, you do have a timer, which you should see on your screen right now.
Yep.
And you do have somebody to compete against. So last week we had Mark Masters on, who got a decent score. So we're going to see if you can beat that. I think the time to beat... Well, we'll let you know actually at the end. We'll let you know at the end.
Don't get too competitive, you know. He's just like, give me the time.
Hang on, this isn't fair. Gareth, one question before you start. A really important question. Yeah, read the questions really quickly.
Pressure is on. I feel the pressure right now.
And don't make a mistake or stutter. If so, I want time taken off. Yeah.
This has become more stressful for me than it has you. This is not the way I want to start my morning. So the way this works, you do have a choice. So we are giving you a choice here. You can pick a number between 1 and 8, but it can't be number 4.
5.
Ooh, interesting choice. Liam, you ready with the clock?
I'm ready. All I've got to do is hit the button.
Okay, let's give you a countdown. Adrian, good luck. 3,
Thank you.
2,
you too.
1. Do you remember your favorite teacher?
Yes, Miss Parr.
Do you like spicy food?
Yes, love it. Indian.
What brand are you a fan of?
Kraft.
What 3 things can't you live without?
Air, water, and my family.
When cheese gets its picture taken, what does it say?
Taste this.
When I say fresh, you say?
Movement.
Wow! Who was the last person you hugged?
My wife.
Sales or marketing?
Both.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid of the dark are you?
2.
If you was a tree, what would you be?
A weeping willow.
Oh, time! Interesting response there.
Thanks.
Whew. Well done, Adrian. That was
thank you.
A very valiant score, and considered responses as well, might I add. So,
thanks.
That
I've actually got to say something as well. I think something happened with the timer at the beginning. It seemed to skip ahead like 3 seconds. So I'm gonna be fair here.
You're the official adjudicator. Yep.
Yeah, it looked like when I pressed it, it went to 3 seconds. So I don't know if there was something wrong this end, but I'm taking 3 seconds off. So
if I was a competitive person, I'd mention the lag time that Gareth took to get to the next question, but but I'm not, so I'll let him off.
Interesting. I have to deal with that every day.
Yeah.
Give him a couple of seconds to respond.
Yeah. So it wasn't lag; it's the brain. Yeah.
So Liam, where does that leave Adrian, and where does that leave Mark Masters on the scoreboard?
Adrian is in first position at 53 seconds, and Mark is at 59 seconds.
Well done.
Well,
We've got a few comments coming as well about your responses, Adrian. So Mr. Andrew Richards, who you may know, we definitely know, he's a bit uncertain about craft. So he was like, craft, really? So
yeah, Vegemite and everything else. And do you not know craft, you heathens? Yeah, come on, guys.
We've got Ben Knowles in chat as well. Ben says, this is the most competitive guy I know.
Thanks, Ben. Observation.
That is a compliment. Definitely a compliment.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great fresh fire round. Thanks for doing that, Adrian.
Pleasure. Good fun.
He's got you lubed up for the ongoing questions that we're going to get into right now. So,
did he just say that out loud, everyone? Yep, he did.
So many puns today. It's definitely an interesting morning.
I know.
So for those of you who've just joined, welcome to the stream. We are discussing the art of virtual selling, which you probably can see. Adrian has we just opened up, I suppose, with a few questions around just sales in general, and we just had a bit of back and forth about, as sales changed because of the virtual world we're now in, or the digital revolution that's unfolding. So I think we'll pick off there. And I think one of the great things we did leave on is we were discussing about sales fundamentals. And I think these things, to your point earlier, Adrian, they don't necessarily change that much. And I think one of the things we have spoken to you about a few times is sharpening the sword in this area. And I think that'd be a great place to start, because Liam and I have had so many great calls with you around this, and you've definitely helped us out. Like, what are your sales fundamentals, and how do you think people can apply these to their life and business?
Yeah, great question. It's actually a two-part question, because you're also talking about virtual sales, and is that different? And then what are some great sales fundamentals, and what can we learn from them? So, you know me, I always try to be slightly unorthodox. So I'm going to ask you guys something first.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Terminate the stream. Turn it off.
Turn it off.
That's not how it works.
Oh, sorry. I did, and as always, I didn't read the rule book before I started. So when you guys think of the word fresh, what do you know, away from it being fresh movement, what does fresh mean to you guys?
So for me, fresh always conjures up the idea of like a sliced apple, or
Nice.
I suppose the feeling of something being new and exciting. That's the way I always think of
I
it.
love that answer.
Yeah,
Liam?
I'm the same. It's almost like the word to me, fresh, is almost like innovating, always doing something new. So it is fresh. Like, it's never something that's been old and used before. It's always got to have like a new spin on it. That's sort of my interpretation.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's kind of similar.
Yeah, they're different answers actually, but it is similar. Like, because Gareth, you talked about that nice fresh slice of the apple, and I am a fan of that answer. It's also, everyone can picture that in their heads, if you know what I mean. And that is talking about, you think of things like fresh food or anything fresh like that, that contrary to what you said, Liam, that actually you can eat an apple every day of the week. But if you buy an apple today and you eat it in 2 weeks, you're actually not going to enjoy that experience.
Not
actually,
fresh.
if anything, what's the truth? You're going to throw the apple away, aren't you, before you can get to that point? Yes, so it's no longer fresh, but it isn't new and innovative. It's just fresh. And what makes it fresh is it's ripe, it's now, and that's what makes it interesting for Gareth, because he's going, I want that fresh apple. it doesn't matter that he's actually already eaten a few hundred apples in his life. He still thinks this apple is amazing today, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Then on your side, Liam, being the visionary that you are, you're kind of going, I see fresh as something innovative and new that I've never done before, which is all fresh. I agree. But the challenge with that is it's quite hard to find something brand new to do every day, because we can't eat a brand new meal every single day of the week, if you know what I mean. But we will eat a fresh meal every day of the week. So in that, and there's I thought about it before we came on, because I love everything about the Fresh brand and what it stands for and what it is. But then I kind of thought to myself, what does actually fresh mean around that? And then how does that apply every day, and how does that apply to sales? So if you take the two things that you guys just answered, and you said, right, I'm going to take Gareth for a minute, which is about being ripe now, etc. That can apply to almost everything. Like you go and buy a Marks and Spencer's ready meal, St. Michael, the patron saint to the single person who doesn't like to cook. You buy the ready meal, ready for the microwave, and you know it's got a use-by date of however many days. In that period, it's fresh. So you have a window when everything is fresh, and you've got to time it right. So you've got a time when you go to the shop, you've got a time when you then subsequently eat that, and it's also got to be attuned to what your desire is at the time. Do I fancy that meal, etc. So there is a fundamental that we'll talk about. And then the other one, Liam, that you're talking about, which is, how do I get out of that just being a mundane thing? How do I get out of that being every day of the week, same old, same old? And that comes from your version of fresh, which is something new, unique, innovative, special as well. And you need them both. And it's interesting. In some respects, I've always seen you guys as the heart and the head, if you know what I mean. And that's a big theme around understanding how to get sales right, and also how to just get everything you do right. As a team, you guys are a perfect complement, because Gareth, you are always the head, if you know what I mean. And Liam, you are always the heart. Now, one without the other never really works. So when your crazy idea, Liam, of milking an elephant comes up, Gareth reasons with you and tells you, why don't we do it as a graphic animation rather than fly to Africa like you suggested? So there's a balance in these things. Your reason. So and with all of that, I'd say take away core to that is understanding that getting things fresh in any situation, because you've got to be fresh for yourself as well as fresh for your audience. And I talked about sales earlier as being about that tip of the spear. It's never, ever about selling ice to the Eskimos. I've heard that phrase over and over. And it's such a bad, poorly used phrase for sales. Yeah. Why would you ever sell ice to Eskimos? One, they have an abundance of it. Two, they don't have any money. So there's no need, no ability to purchase. And if you did sell it to them, where does that leave your heart at the end of that? You've just kind of basically made an Eskimo in debt to you for life for something they didn't even need. None of that works out well in that equation. And the second half of that statement is, and sell, what is it? You guys can tell me. What's the second half? Sand to the Arabs.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too.
You all know that saying. So now my logical brain says, well, shouldn't you sell? And I'm going to say Middle East, not Arabs. I think that's wrong. Shouldn't you be selling ice to the Middle East? Yeah. As opposed to that. And actually, it's a really fundamental understanding. And actually, if ever anybody says that saying, I'd love anybody who's listening to correct them on it and say, no, actually, what I will do is I will sell ice to the Middle East, but I will also buy it off the Eskimos so that they actually have money. and then I will sell it to the Middle East, who have both the need and the money, and make a reasonable profit for myself, make a reasonable profit for the Eskimos, and make the Middle East delighted because they have a really great supply of fresh ice from the North Pole, as it were. And if I just pause on that, like the fundamentals behind that is actually not believing that sales is about forcing something on someone. It's actually more about finding exactly what someone needs and delivering to that. And then if I add in those other layers that we just talked about your heart, Liam, and your head, Gareth, which is you do need to make sure it's fresh, a Gareth fresh, in terms of it's ripe, it's ready, the timing is right for them. But you also have to inspire them. You have to give everybody something, a bit of what Liam's talking about. You know, everybody wants that, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all have a heart and a head. And this isn't about, just a digital execution of a sale, because otherwise you wouldn't need people involved in that. You might as well just, design an algorithm that automatically markets to people, finds an audience, answers the automatic questions with their answers, and then sells them a product. And actually, that isn't what we're about, is it? It's actually about that human-to-human interaction.
It's so true. Like that, the Eskimo thing is a perfect example. Like I must have heard that like 100 times. Like,
yep.
And you hear it a lot when you're also in sales. And what's interesting is people actually use it as like a bragging right. Like,
yes, they do.
I've said it before. I've said to well, my parents have said it to me, like when I was in sales back in the day, they're like, you could sell snow to Eskimos. And I was like, yeah, I can.
Yeah, I'm that guy. I'm that guy.
But you're right.
Gareth's got all American on us.
That's the vision I get. Like, it is one of them kind of street salesmen, like, hey, want some of this?
It's not ethical, is it?
Yep.
It's not like, why would you do that? They don't need that. Yep. And it's just it's like, I remember back in the day, I used to be in a retail store selling printers, and I just sold printers for a commission. I didn't really care about what they needed or whatever. Like, all I cared is I sold the printer, got my £5 commission, and I got my they come back and bought inks off me, which I got commission on. And that's almost the same thing. It wasn't ethical. It's not right for that person. So it really
might have been like they might have had a genuine need, but you probably were just told to shift as many units as you possibly could. So you were kind of somewhat indoctrinated into that thinking.
Yeah.
As part of it.
That's where my heart's come from, I think. Like, I'm just
not
like that now.
To break out of that.
It cracked out of its shell during that process, I'm sure.
He's like a butterfly, isn't he? Or a moth, maybe. I don't know.
I don't like moths.
One of the things we briefly mentioned earlier, and I think what I'm getting out of this is the word empathy. I think we've said it before, like people are throwing that word around quite a lot, granted, but in its fundamental, is that what needs to be applied to make a sale successful, or is it just something that you should apply because it's the right thing to do? Like, how does that work with empathy?
Well, what you always hope is both, actually, because if you can find a place where you can marry up the right thing to do with the best thing for your role or your business, then you're in that sweet spot, aren't you? And so an empathy, you asked another question earlier, which is difference between marketing and sales. Like, empathy is key to both of those, not just sales. And you also raised, like, you've talked about the art of virtual selling at the beginning. I think it's really important to call out that none of this changes whether it's virtual sales or face-to-face sales or anything like that. And sales is not a dirty word. Like, sales is actually about trying to find the right solution for the right audience and actually like delivering something of true value. So that's where your point around empathy comes in. And actually, we go back to that fresh meaning ripe, like you've got to, and you add all that, the things that you talked about, like it's not just that the apple has to be right. You also have to have the appetite for the apple at the time. So there's no point in trying to give an apple to somebody who doesn't like apples. Like my daughter hates apples. If you put one anywhere near her, she'll either hit you or run away, one of the two. So again, like what I've got to do is get the right thing in front of her as well. And that's back to the art of sales, is actually not about ice to the Eskimos. It's about actually pausing a moment and also being prepared to ask questions. You know, there's a difference between selling and telling. And a lot of people fall into the trap of doing the second one too much, which is, here it is, I'm going to tell you all about it and just talk at you. And I don't know about you guys, but I hate it when someone does that. You know, if someone just talks at you.
Better when someone like asks you the question and you get more. I always look at it as like it's almost like ammunition. Like when you ask a question, they give you some golden nuggets and you just store them like back here.
Absolutely.
And then you're then like, when they say, oh, I dropped my, for example, let's say a phone. Oh, I dropped my phone last time because I'm super clumsy. Put that back here. And when you come to sell, like, let's say insurance or whatever, or a case of some kind, you say, oh, you said earlier on that you dropped your phone because you're super clumsy. Like, one thing that you might consider is this, and this. And it's like, they're actually giving you all of the information. You just need to put the jigsaw pieces in the right place.
Yep. And that is, that's the art of sales. It's actually not that complicated, but what you do have to do is be clear about the things that you guys just talked about, like empathy, but also being really clear about the right audience for the right product. ICE for the Middle East or whoever else has the need.
Do you think it's like, so we're saying like the art of sales, do you think it is, I know we said like digitally or physically, it's almost the same thing. Do you think it changes at all when you're talking to different audiences, such as if you're a B2C consumer or if you're B2B, do you think there's two different alleys there instead? Like on
yes and
that
no.
track?
Yeah, you're probably picking up a theme. I seem to be answering everything yes and no. So strategically, no. So the fundamentals are the same in terms of you need to identify your audience and identify their needs and serve to those needs and to the best of your ability. Tactically, yes, there's obviously some really significant differences tactically between those two things. That when you're engaging consumers, you're generally engaging in a much either higher volume, lower incremental purchase, et cetera, you know, it tends to have a, you know, like a wider spread approach. And therefore, that's why like we were talking earlier also with marketing, you're doing a bit more catch-all. Whereas B2B tends to be a smaller audience number, but tends to have much clearer matrix, and therefore you can pinpoint right in to really clear deliverables. But they are only tactics, they're not the strategy. The strategy stays the same, you know, which is, who is it that I should be talking to? What is it I should be asking them? Based on what they answer, what is the right solution for their needs?
Yeah, it's a really strong way of looking at it with them three steps. I think they sound so simple when you say them like that, 1, 2, 3, but
they are.
Even ourselves, we find it's so easy to diverge away from them, you know, because equally people are out there today, especially at the minute, you know, shops are closing left, right, and center. People have got like no way to sell other than virtually sell. You know, this could be a great way for people out there who are struggling with a physical store closing down.
Of course.
I think you have to have that ingrained into you, don't you, to keep going back to that true methodology rather than just go, oh, I can just get a quick sale here by skipping some of that.
Yep.
Is there ever a right time to kind of ditch any of that process, or should you always stick to that as a fundamental rule?
You should always stick to it. But fundamentally, and that you use that word, fundamentally, you should always stick to those disciplines. But you can tactically do them in different ways at a different pace. Like if you saw the process being those 3 steps, obviously there are more steps than that, but let's say it's a 5-step process. You could, in theory, do all 5 steps in one meeting, or you could, in some cases, as you guys know, take 25 meetings to get through those steps. What I would say to you is, if you think of that, if you try and circumnavigate that and jump from 1 to 5, you look at what's in the middle of that. And what actually is in the middle of that is actually understanding needs, listening to that, then giving them a proposition that matches needs. And would you ever miss that out? No. The reason people do is because you said, like, it's so easy, and it's true, and we are all guilty of it, me included, of jumping steps in that. And it's because we're human, like we all have our human flaws. Impatience is one of the biggest drivers for that. Also assumption, like we assume we know the answer to the question, so we don't ask the question. And then it's only further down the track, even sometimes a year later, that you find out that actually wasn't what you thought it was. So sometimes you should just ask.
I think one of the things that you've helped us personally build out, and this might be really entry level stuff for some people, but I know it's helped us with our sales process, is just having them processes like a part of your pipeline as such. Like, I suppose before, to be completely transparent, before we started Fresh Movement, we didn't know what a pipeline was. Like, we did not know what and that, saying that now, even a year in, even a year in, like now I laugh at that and think, how the bloody hell did I not know what that was? You know what I mean? How did I even think about starting up a business without that? Like, some of this stuff is really important. And I think what we did is we took some of that early advice from yourself and we put that into our kind of pipeline. You can build that in Excel, you could use whatever. Like, that was a really good thing that we locked onto quite early. Like, if you do struggle, as I did, and as Liam did as well, about which stage at the process you're in, make it super simple for yourself. Use Post-it notes or do it on an Excel spreadsheet, and make sure that you're just taking your customers through each of these steps, because especially when you're having different calls with different people at different times, it can very easily add up to, I don't know where I'm actually at with this customer. And then as we've found out, that can often lead to confusion and, losing the sale.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really good point, Gareth, actually. And there's obviously a much deeper conversation around our pipeline, but you're right, there's a very simplified view of it. And I would say, I'm going to start back with empathy. Like, first thing is, the purpose of the pipeline is not to guarantee a sale. The purpose of the pipeline is to ensure that you find exactly the right solution for your client. That's the purpose of the pipeline, and you want to go through it in those steps so you do that, because jumping it means, as we said earlier, you miss some of the key things that mean that you're assuming you know what they need, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you've got an Eskimo mortgaged up to his eyeballs with 5 igloos that he doesn't need, if you know what I mean. So I think it is important to have those disciplines, but also understand the reason why. It isn't so you can bang out more sales, inverted commas. It's kind of the wrong mentality and wrong approach to have. It's actually to ensure that you optimize for success for your clients, even because if you can achieve success for them, you'll achieve success for yourself. And that hand-in-hand success is fundamental to a partnership. And I think one of the most important things to think about is that it's something you guys asked me once before. It's kind of like, well, aren't you an events business? What's happening at the moment now that COVID's here? How could you still be selling, because you're not allowed to do events anymore? And the answer is quite simple. We're not an events business. Like, we are a partner who helps our clients find the best way to engage their clients, whatever that is. And the rest is tactics, whether that's a physical face-to-face event, whether that's a digital event, a digital deployment, whether it's a hybrid, whether it's none of those things, whether it's, I don't know, projecting their logo on the moon, whatever it is, our role is to, we can do it. Yeah, no, our role is to work with them to find out what their need is and come up with the best way of doing it. That's the key to that pipeline. And the pipeline itself, I would normally sketch it out. So it's, but it fundamentally is all about, firstly, the thing is, we went back and we were talking earlier about being fresh, being ripe. It's all about timing and understanding that. Also, the other side to timing is that the one single most valuable asset that everybody has, and I'll ask you guys this actually, I'm going to ask a question before I answer it, and you think about this. What's the one thing that is anybody in the world would pay everything they have for, above anything else?
What's the one thing in the world that they would pay everything they have in the world for?
And I mean, aside from the things like saying, like keep my family safe and all those kind of things.
I was going.
Yeah. But for yourself, like, what's the one thing, if you were faced with it and you had a choice, that you would pretty much give your entire wealth over for if you were offered it?
Life.
And it can't be health.
You tell me your answer.
I would say life. Like,
and what do you mean by say?
Like,
it's along the road. Yeah, and you think about that though. Like, what do you mean by life? Like, so if you were there on your deathbed and you were told you have a month to live, but there's a medicine that's going to take your entire wealth.
I'm going to be like Andrew Richards. Time.
You got it.
It's sort of the same thing. It's like
it is the same
another
thing.
man with the sales mentality.
I'll give you half of it, Liam. But you're right.
It is the same thing. You are right.
No, but you think you could be the wealthiest person in the world, but when it comes to it, if you were offered another year to hand over that wealth, you'd do it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There's very few people that wouldn't. So understanding that time is your most valuable asset and the most invaluable thing you have, and then you go back to the other thing about it being fresh and ripe, combine those two things. Like, you want to, the beginning of that sales process, identify all of the ideal right people to be talking to. You don't want to waste your time or their time. You don't want to talk to somebody that doesn't have the need. But equally, you don't want to try and push a solution to them that they don't need either, because you're wasting their time and your time again. Like, why not spend all your time talking to all the right people and forming really good, positive relationships that you both mutually benefit out of? And that's what the process is about. So the first bit is just identifying it. The middle bit is then, straight after identifying them, talk to them. And that's where you're talking about, is virtual different to physical? No, it's just whether you do that via Teams or Zoom or whatever technology you use, whether you do that in person and meet them, whether you do that in a coffee shop, whether you do that at your office, their office, whether you do that in the UK, the USA, the North Pole, or the Middle East, it doesn't actually matter. It's just have that conversation. And then the third bit of that is that conversation should involve more questions than telling. You should be understanding, back to your empathy, Gareth, understanding what they need. And then the fourth bit is agreeing that need, like matching that to something that you have as a solution, and also being honest. If you don't have the solution, try and be honest about that, but also try and point them in the right direction. You think about the stores that you sometimes go into in other countries when you're on holiday and you're trying to find something, and then the store owners go, actually, no, go down the road, turn left, then on the right, and you'll find exactly what you need. You remember that store better than any other experience that you're there, and you then want to go back to it, not because they sold you something you didn't need, but because they helped you genuinely. So you try and keep true to that. Like, think about it, back to your empathy again, Gary. Think about that with empathy. And then if you do all that right, then actually the thing that everybody talks about selling, which is, are you a closer, is actually irrelevant. Because actually that goes back to old school. That comes from the same people that talk about selling ice to Eskimos. Actually, if you see it as a partnership, you see it as delivering a solution, you see it as needing to listen, not tell, and then understand the difference between selling and telling is listening and then matching to needs versus just talking at people and saying, here it is, then actually it gets quite easy at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And we say about like helping people, like you remember them. I want to create a moment a bit like that now. We've got a question from a good friend of mine called Benjamin Hurrell. And he's got a question for you. And I think it was in relation to when we said about like the B2B versus B2C type of thing, the different types of tactics and stuff. So he says, question for Adrian, you spoke about being tactically at different to different senior levels. I'm curious about your approaches to the C-suite and senior pitch meetings. What should we know?
Okay, good question, actually, because that's like another layer deep, because you're at a bigger level, you're talking about the difference between B2B and B2C, but now you're talking about within the decision-making unit. Like there's an interesting, like I quite like understanding data and analytics. And in a typical B2B sale, Gareth, Liam, have a guess how many decision makers are typically involved in an average B2B sale?
How many decision makers?
50%.
No, number.
I'd
how
say
many
1 or
people?
2.
Oh, a number. 1.
Interesting. And Liam said 1 or 2. What did you say? 1 or 2, Liam? Why not? No, not the same as Gareth.
Well, no, it's kind of interesting because I think I know where you're going with this. Like, for example, if there's more than one, technically, are you speaking to the right person? Because you should be speaking to the decision maker, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And actually, if you think about it, we've just had a great question about what about a C-suite decision maker, which doesn't that already suggest there could be more than one type of decision maker?
Yeah.
Like
so one for brand, one for marketing, one for sales, that type of thing.
Like you guys used to be at Microsoft. You think about when a decision got made, how many people actually got involved in making that decision? Now rethink what would be your answer? Now you've rethought about that.
I'm going to go with chat 7.
Interesting. Gareth?
I said 1, so I can't go any lower, can I?
No.
I mean, the way I look at it is, it goes up and then back down. So yes. there could be up to 7, but ultimately it always comes back down to that one person. Like if I think of anyone who we've spoken to over the last year or so, we start speaking to that one person, that contact, who then maybe then speak to a few more people, more senior, or even people on the board. And then it tends to come back down to that one person who then goes, right, I've made my decision. It's this. So it's a really tricky question for me. But collectively, 7, 8, maybe. But I always think it comes back to that one person. I might be wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because all of it's right in a way, if you know what I mean. But and it's interesting you picked the number 7, Liam, first, actually. Because the stat is slightly higher than 7 is the average. So it typically is. So I don't know if you quickly Googled it while I wasn't looking then.
No. Someone in chat mentioned 7's the magic number, so I just said 7.
Nice.
Chat is killing it today. Chat, thank you. Like you know, you're saving us so many times there. You know, admittedly, sales is not our gig. Marketing is more our gig. But
but you're learning.
You are on point.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I know we're going to go into it in a second, but Andrew Richards has made a good comment, which we can totally relate to as well. Is he said, I've lost sales when I thought I was talking to the decision maker, but he wasn't talking to the decision maker. And that is that's what I was almost saying of like, there's been so many examples of where we think we're speaking to someone who makes a decision, then they need to go and get approval. And you're like, well, they're not the decision maker in a way. And then they might have to go to that C-suite or that board of 7, 8 people and then go, oh, yeah, we've got this. And it's almost like insanely hard because then we're relying on that one person to pitch our business, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. I love it when you guys answer my question for me. I'm saying, because this came out of the question, how do you go about targeting and selling to a C-suite, and how's that different to others? And there's a reason I ask you that, because there's some more fundamentals behind it. If I just answered that question tactically, it only paints a very small picture for you, because there are different types of decision maker in a process. And if you know now that, one of the things you've learned, on average, it's 7 in a B2B sale, but it can be more than that, it can be less than that. Like I've been in sales situations where the number has been in excess of 30. And I have been in ones that it literally is just one person and nobody else gets involved, which is, the larger number is more common than the smaller number, I would say to you as well. Now, to Gareth's point and your point, Liam, about that you raised, it's very common that we only talk to one, and that is a mistake. Now, back to the C-suite person. So the different types of decision makers are, there is a financial decision maker. So there is somebody that owns the budget, who signs the budget off. In some businesses, the financial decision maker is also the last person to sign it off. In some decision-making groups, they're the first one to sign it off, meaning, here's your budget, go and decide what you like. And it actually is down to the type and nature of that decision maker, because some of them are micromanagers, so therefore they have to be the last one to sign it off. And you see that in certain business cultures. Some of them like to run with autonomy, so as long as they cascade their budgets down, they let the team do the rest. And so the team then runs with autonomy. You see a lot of that in Microsoft, as one example that you guys are familiar with, that once it gets cascaded, then the teams can do what they feel is appropriate, which I'm a big fan of, if you know what I mean. But if you're looking at it from our side with empathy, from a sales side, you can see what I'm saying. You need to identify that as one of the things. A C-suite person is not always the financial decision maker. Sorry,
no, it's all good.
So they're, but they are a key strategic decision maker in a process. And again, they may or may not get involved in the process. But if you have identified it, back to the question, and you do need to sell to them, it's also understanding where they're coming from. So back to empathy, a strategic decision maker tends to be very apparent, because you'll see that they ask very pointed, clear, strategic questions and want equally as pointed, clear, strategic answers back. And that's what they're focused on. They tend to be very short in their time. They tend to be very focused on outcome and very focused on delivering on their core objectives. They are fantastic people to sell to, but where people often missell to them is that they don't recognize their core objectives and interests and try to sell to them like the other decision makers. So they go too much about the tactical detail within there that actually a lot of C-suite people don't actually care, if you know what I mean. But everybody is different, so you have to start by asking and finding that out. But quite often, it's not uncommon, we all do this. You spend 5 hours of collective pitching to a group to then spend 15 minutes in front of a C-suite decision maker to pitch the final idea.
Yeah.
And that's because they are time poor, back to the most valuable resource. And the further you move up the food chain, the less time they have. But the more pointed their needs are, they'll be very focused. So you need to do your homework and set up and make sure you're very clear before you get in the room exactly what they're looking for, expecting to see, and what the questions are going to ask you and the answers they need to have are before you get in that room, if you know what I mean. Because then that 15 minutes will be spent exceptionally well for you and them.
Doing the right
so that's
thing.
the,
and I think,
yeah.
I think one of the things on that as well is when you're coming up with them questions and responses, this is something that I think we've learned the process is the response you often give isn't often the response that you think is instantly right. If
Correct.
It's
I'm glad you said that.
It's like what you just said. You have to really think about what is the right response for them to hear versus what is the first thing that comes to my head when I think of that response.
Yep. Like, what are all the classic questions? Like, let's say you're talking about a digital hub experience platform. Is your digital hub experience platform a off-the-shelf template? Is my question as a C-suite decision maker to you. Do you know what the answer is? What's the best answer you could possibly give, both of you?
It's not about the platform, it's about the experience that we deliver.
Gareth, can you better that?
Similar thing. I just fluff it out a bit more. Everything we
Yeah.
create is
Yes, you would.
always about the brief we've just received. As you can see,
Yeah.
we've kind of put things in place here which are going to bring your brand to life, and probably finish with Liam's, but it's not necessarily about
nice.
the platform and the tactic we're going to use. It's more about the strategy and how we're going to deploy this project for you.
So in chat, what does everyone think to their answers?
Oh God, I'm not. This is a completely different spin to Fresh Friday, which I'm completely cool with, but I wasn't prepared.
To be honest, we often ask our guests back, and I don't think this is going to be a situation where we do.
Okay, well, I achieved my objective. So has anybody come back?
I think chat will agree. This is one they'll enjoy to see again and again. Gareth and Liam squirm for an hour.
Yeah.
It's
so has chat answered?
Vulnerable.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
Not at the moment. I think they're still thinking, but...
well, I'm going to answer for them. You're both wrong. I'm really sorry.
Damn it.
Although nobody's ever wrong, but if there was a wrong, you'd be wrong. Because I think you guys weren't listening earlier. I said never assume you know the answer.
Ask the question. Why'd you ask?
Oh, there you go, Liam. You just nailed it. You went from 0% to 100% in a flash.
He's learning.
Yep. See, you both just made the fatal error. And as you rightly said, it's so easy to get caught out.
And the thing is, and it's kind of good to do that, because where you've asked us, we weren't expecting this, of course. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what you would get in that situation in a pitch. Like, someone's just going to say it like that to you, and then you're going to say something like this, and you're then going to probably eventually end up losing the sale of some kind, and then going, why was it? But actually, looking at it like that, it's like, why'd you ask about that? It's really interesting. I just got a round of applause from Ben. Thanks, Ben.
Nice. Yeah, well done. That's the fundamental.
You've mentioned it recently as well. It does a couple of things, doesn't it? It bats it back, which you've been given so many examples of that today, Adrian. We should have learned by example by now. But, we're rolling with the punches, aren't we? But I think you even told us the other day, it gives you that little moment of breathing time as well, doesn't it? To go, what did they actually mean by that? And they answer the question as well, which is critical.
Yeah.
Like they'll give you
and answering the question, they're going to tell you what they need. And you're in a position then to be honest, maintain your integrity, and say, yes, we can do that, and this is the best way to do it. Or no, that's not us, but I'll tell you who is really good at that. Talk to these people. I'd also tell you that, and you must have all been in this situation, and I reckon everybody who's online has been in this situation, that it's not uncommon to go through a whole series of sales process with the other decision makers, get in front of the C-suite person, and they have a completely different view of what they want. And they are actually the decision maker. And if you assume because everyone else told you it was right, then actually that's your mistake, not their mistake by telling you the wrong thing.
Is there any tips? Because I was sort of thinking about this earlier. Is there any tips to, is there a way you could test the person that you're with to find out if they are the key decision maker? And is there a way it can almost be influenced and push up the chain?
Yeah, it's really easy. Gareth, do you know why? How?
Gareth, do you know how?
Do I know how to test if the person's the key decision maker?
Yeah.
Why is it you want to find that out, Adrian?
I love it. You've learned.
I have got a response. I think
high five you.
Just to give you my gut response, it is you can ask some leading questions which kind of make you aware if that's the right person.
I think asking is the right thing.
Yeah, you can ask them directly, but you wouldn't say, "Oh, are you the person who's going to make the decision?" In the first 5 minutes of a conversation. So you kind of the way I often do it is put that throughout the conversation in a few different ways.
That's a good way to do it. Also, think of the question fundamentally you just said, which is, "Are you the decision maker?" Think about how you could ask that in a different way that has empathy and is completely acceptable, but also positive for them. So you could say, knowing that you have to go through a process to get the approval on this, which we'd both love to happen, what do you need to do and what can I do to help you prepare for that? And who else needs to see this? Because it's not uncommon that I need to present this to a bigger team, but they quite often need it in a slightly different way. And who would that be, and how's that best prepared? And it's I'd say half the time my team and I ask that question, the answer is, oh, I'm really glad you asked that because I didn't think you'd be up for coming and presenting to my C-suite. And actually now you've asked, I haven't really thought about all of that. Let's talk about it. And then you can huddle with them as a team on their side and come up with the best way to help sell it in for them. Because that becomes a win-win, doesn't it? Because they want to sell it in. If you've got to the point where you've agreed, you've found what they need and you've matched that, and they've got to jump through some of their own internal flaming hoops to get that, then why would you want to check out at that point? Like, we should be there all the way through. That's what being a partner is, and a partnership is. Like, let's find that out. And then by finding that out, then you answer the question we just asked. How do I best prepare to sell to a C-suite audience? By doing all of that, like by literally asking, what is it? Can I do that with you? Can I help you do that? What is it that will help get that? What are they like as a person? How long would we be able to get with them? What do they think of the brief? Have they even seen this yet? Did they write the brief? Did they just give you the budget? All these things, the more you understand of that, the easier it gets to go and present to them because you're not guessing.
It's like back to what I was saying earlier on around these puzzle pieces. Every question you get, there's a puzzle piece. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got this big picture of then going, that's exactly what we need to do, rather than going, I think it's this. It's like a full big picture.
I think a good tip as well that I got told a while back, a lot of this is bedded in psychology as well. Like the vast majority of sales and marketing, marketing more so I've looked at, but if you can learn enough just to be dangerous, like that's probably like the right level you need to be at with psychology to be really good at this stuff. I think you don't need a doctorate, but you need to know your fundamentals, and it does really serve well. Like, I'm no psychology buff, but I have read a little bit, and I think most good sales or marketing fundamentals are based in a lot of that, reading people, understanding not only what mental state they're in, but also what drives them and their ambitions and all that stuff. It really comes into a lot of psychology basics, really, and fundamentals. So that's something that I thought I'd add into.
It's a really good point, Gareth. Yeah, and you're definitely dangerous. You do know enough to be dangerous, that's for sure. But
don't know about that.
Yeah, here you are. But actually, I think people also overthink. Thanks, Gareth. I do think people overthink all of that. Like, you're right. You don't need to be a psychologist. You don't. All you need to do is ask the questions to understand. Like, you don't have to be able to second guess by some hidden means what somebody's after. You can actually just say, "What are you after?" Because
a good therapy session's all about, isn't it?
It is.
Just asking a few questions, being nosy,
that's all they do,
probing.
Isn't it? Yeah. And then the hour's up, and then the big bill comes. Yep.
Speaking from experience, are we, Gaz?
Well, it's been a while since I've been on the couch. I've got one in the studio, just in case. I think I'll need to sit down after Fresh Friday, actually.
Take a seat, Gaz.
Definitely.
Guys, we've burned through an hour, and there's so much more we can discuss. We'd even get onto our second topics, but
we will not keep you. Could be another episode of interrogation.
There will be. This is the thing. Like, are we going to ask Adrian back? I think we will. Adrian, I think we will continue another time. We know how incredibly busy you are. We do want to finish up on a few bits. If any more questions come in, please get them in, because we will get them answered just before we finish. We have discussed quite a lot. So anybody who is just tuning in, in fact, I'm gonna deal out a bit of direct sales right now to everybody who's watching. Give us a hand if you are watching live. Smash that share button, because if this has helped you out with Adrian's assistance, like he was saying earlier, you could help somebody else out. And, you know, that's the art of sales, especially virtual selling. All you have to do is hit the like button and press share. And then you could be helping one of your colleagues, customers, clients, friends out today on Fresh Friday, and we would appreciate it tenfold. So please do that.
Absolutely.
We've been speaking about virtual selling, the art of selling more than virtual selling specifically. And I think just to conclude, I think we're kind of in agreement that there is no difference, if I'm right in saying that, Adrian, between if you're selling physically or virtually. There are a lot of tactics, which we didn't delve into because there's so many.
Correct.
You know, we ran through a few: LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Zoom, live streaming. You know, you've got Instagram shops, you've got all sorts of tools which you can use. But if you keep these fundamentals, like being empathetic to your customers, making sure that you listen, make sure you speak to the right people, make sure you correctly qualify these customers, that kind of gives you the right backdrop to kind of build upon. Is there anything else that I've missed there, Adrian, that you just want to add in to them kind of core fundamentals?
I think you summed it up really nice, Gareth. And I would say it's all about that framework. Like if you stick to the word you use, fundamentals, I'm a massive fan of. If you stick to your fundamentals and your framework, what then happens in between that doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be skilled at everything. As long as you stick to your core fundamentals and disciplines and do the things we just talked about, step through a simple sales process, ask questions, 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you talk, all those kind of great little sayings that stick with you. But it is about the fundamentals, and way too many people get hung up on trying to learn all of the tactical detail of everything. And the honest truth is, and you think about that, you just mentioned it earlier, that there are so many different tactical ways you can do things. Why would, you know, and if you said, well, how many different tactical ways are there of selling? There must be millions, absolutely millions. How many different strategic ways are there of selling? A few, a handful. Which one are you more likely to learn and which one's more likely to be effective? Well, I'm always going to choose the strategic over the tactical, because also, when does the tactics come out of date and when do they change? Every day, every minute, every second. So why are you trying to learn something that's permanently redundant? Just flow with it. That's your free-flowing river that sits inside your framework. You know, like, so that is the core to it. If there's one thing to take away, it's just stick to those core framework fundamentals.
Hopefully, there's one more thing that we can take away as well. We need some inspiration, Adrian, and I think we're gonna move on to our final segment of the show before we wrap up, because this is where we also need your help. So
okay, always happy to help. Oh, there's the elephant.
There is the milking elephant, and it is the final section. Thank you for the segue, Liam. I am as excited as I am nervous about this week's challenge, because anybody who may not know this about Adrian, he has many different ways he likes to keep fresh. His mind, body, and soul. So I don't know which one we're going to pick today, but this is the moment in time where we ask Adrian, how does he like to keep fresh? And for everybody who's watching, keep it fresh is one of the hashtags we use, and we're referring to, you know, how do you keep your mind fresh? I think everybody's had that lockdown moment. I certainly have, where you know, it just becomes a little bit monotonous life. So how do you keep your mind fresh? How do you keep your body fresh? Physical shape, drinking, eating, exercise, whatever. And how would you keep your soul fresh? And you don't have to give us answers to all of them. Just one tip. We're looking for Adrian Le Mans. What is your go-to keep it fresh tip? And please bear in mind that me and Liam are going to have to do this for the next 2 weeks.
Are you? Oh, that could change my answer completely.
Oh God, I knew this was going to happen.
So if it's, you guys have to do this for the next 2 weeks, it's you have to run through the town every morning at 5 a.m. That's how keep it fresh, because it's so fresh.
I missed it. I missed it.
I said Because you guys have to do it for the next 2 weeks every day. It's run naked through town every morning at 5 a.m.
Ah,
I'm kind of glad we missed it.
But that's not the real answer. Yeah, no, that's not the real answer.
is that what you do, Adrian? It has to be something you do.
Okay, of course I do. Of course I do. No, really, I think wake up every morning and see every day as a fresh day, and then start the day off in the right manner. Like, remember I mentioned earlier, time is the most valuable asset that we all have. So do be prepared to plan your time and think about all the things that you need to achieve that day and balance it, because there are things that you should do for the three things you talked about. There's things you need to do for your mind, there's things that you need to do for your body, and there's things that you need to do for your soul. Plan time for each of them every day, and book it in. And what I'd also say is, like, when you take those three things, that quite often some of those things are the things that you don't like doing. You know, and I know, Gareth, we've talked about this many years ago, and it stuck with both of us for a long time, which is, if you think of the things that you have to do but you least want to do, because I've always found that there's quite often a difference between the things that you like doing the most and the things that you should do the most. They're quite often different things.
100%.
Do all the things that you should do, that you like the least, first. Plan them in early, get them out of the way, and get them done. Because if you don't do them at the beginning, I promise you'll put them off the entire day, and they'll move and move and move and never get done. But then also plan the other really important things. So if keeping fit is one of those, then you should plan a bit of time in for that. Because most people say to me, the reason I don't go to the gym is because I haven't got the time. And I'm like,
yep.
Well, if you work it out, half an hour out of 24 hours in a day is what? You know, work it out. It's what, 4%? Kind of, you know, but you can't afford 30 minutes of the day to do some exercise. Of course you can, you just don't want to do it. So plan it in, book it in, and get a discipline around it. But all the other things as well, you know, spend time with the people you love, plan it, make sure you do it. Don't just let it get marginalized by all the other stuff you do. And that falls into all those three things. So that's how I keep it fresh.
Whoa, Adrian, that is such a good tip. And the way we're going to do this is probably going to expose us a little bit. So I think Liam and I will, over the
Not
next
talking
2
about running
weeks.
through town naked, are we, Gaz? Because I'm not on to that level of exposure.
That's in the next session.
See, that actually excited me, but that's a little bit too
No
much
worries.
detail. What we will do, we will be sharing with you guys on social media, hopefully trying to inspire. We're going to share with you some of the things we're going to plan in for the next 2 weeks that
Great.
we have been putting off, and we're going to share that, and hopefully everybody who's watching, join along with us. Do you know what I mean? Use the hashtag Keep It Fresh. Reshare our stuff, or we'll reshare yours. If you share anything with us that you didn't want to do, we'll make sure we give you a shout out and some props for doing that, because I think that's
Nice.
a really good tip.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
That was
Adrian,
mighty
thank you
fresh.
so much. It was mighty
Pleasure.
fresh. And
Pleasure.
thank you for jumping on. We will invite you back if you would be willing to come back. Is that an agreement we can lock in right now?
Indeed. Of course I will, guys. For you guys, anything.
We're just going through our calendar right now, Adrian, and we're just going to lock in the 4th of December, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, send over the invite.
Just using one of your sales techniques.
Yeah, I like it.
Guys, hope you enjoyed it. Now, there is a date you can lock in, and it's in 2 weeks' time. So the date that we are going to get back on for Fresh Friday will be the 4th of December. We're not going to let you know right now who our guest is, but it is another banger. So, Adrian, thank you for joining. We will be sharing this out over the next couple of weeks, so look out for that. And is there any final things that you want to say before we leave? Is there any resources, anywhere people can check out, anything like that?
We just talked about sales. So if people want to get a hold of me, then find me. That's one of the arts of sales.
Oh.
Challenge. Mic drop. Mic drop. All right, guys, thanks for jumping in, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.